we're now live. Okay, team. It is now 3 o'clock. So, when you're ready, Tom. Welcome to those online watching on live stream. And I have one apology at the stage, which is from Councillor Kett. Any others?
Just noting potential early departure for me, Mayor Clark.
Yep, thank you. Signal it early on. Hopefully we won't be here that long. Would somebody like to move the acceptance of the apology?
I'll move.
Leslie, thank you. And Grant, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. No declarations of interest from anybody? Nope. And no public forum. So we've just got some minutes to accept, and some of them have recommendations, so we just work our way through that. The first set of minutes is from the meeting of the council held on the 29th of October.
Move.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Extraordinary Infrastructure and Projects Committee held on the 29th of October as well. Grant and Barry, thank you. Any discussion on those? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the hearing of the backflow prevention policy and water supply bylaw held on the 5th of November, and it comes with a series of 3 sets of recommendations to council as well. Yeah, Grant, yeah, thank you. A seconder. Yeah, Tom, thank you. Any discussion about those suite of recommendations? You did well. All right, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. The minutes of the Infrastructure and Projects Committee held on the 5th of November, same day. Barry and Alex, thank you. Any discussion about those minutes? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing and Regulatory Committee held on the 12th of November.
I'll move that they received and that we confirm the recommendations to council, just noting that in item 4 it should read 4 councillors instead of 5.
Yep, thank you for that.
I'll second that.
Second, Leslie, thank you. Any further discussions about those recommendations? Yes, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just out of interest, really, I'm just conscious that the Donovan Park Management Plan consultation starts on December the 4th.
Yes.
Do we have an opportunity to see the question or find out a wee bit more about the consultation strategy around that? I'm just conscious it's a very busy time of the year.
Not sure I understand the question.
Yep.
So when we were discussing it, I think the decision we landed on was making sure that we were clear of the management plan consultation before we went out to do the round of consultation that looks at the potential of reviewing part of the parts.
Yeah, we just want to ask you about do we see it? I'm not challenging anything, just out of interest, a line of sight towards how that will roll out, how we will consult at that time of the year. There's markets, there's things on, people out and about, busy.
We normally don't see that, but Lisa might circulate a plan around councillors if you're interested.
Yeah, that's just a process thing. Just out of interest, do we have a line of sight as to how that might roll out?
I think the deadline's in February, isn't it? Yep.
February 14.
Yep.
From memory.
Yep. Thank you. Any further discussion on that?
Michael.
Oh, Michael.
Through yourself, Chair, I'll just ask one of my GMs to give some feedback in relation to that. So, Trudy.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, apologies, Rhiannon is unwell today. So, normally there'll be a consultation plan come out. We can definitely get that circulated to you, and it'll have a variety of different ways in which the public can engage with the material.
Cool, awesome. That's question answered. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just an update on item 10 of that, which was the unbudgeted expenditure request of $5,000 towards Queenstown Lake District. And just to give you an update on that, at this stage, none of the other 3 councils are prepared to contribute. So that we're not held in an awkward position, this will be considered at the mayoral forum, which is in the first week of December, and then we'll give Queenstown some feedback. I wasn't prepared to authorise something if my colleague councillors or colleague mayors weren't prepared to go down that track as well. So I'll give you an update as soon as that decision's made. Any further discussions? No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Minutes for the Extraordinary Infrastructure and Projects Committee held on the 12th of November. Barry and Grant, thank you. Any discussion about those minutes? You'll be home by 4 o'clock. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee held on the 19th of November.
Moved.
Leslie, thank you. And Grant, yes. Any discussion with those minutes? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Finance and Policy Committee on the 19th of November,
Moved.
which has one recommendation to Council. Leslie's moved.
Including the recommendation.
Thank you. Barry, any discussion about those? No, there being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. The draft ICHL letter of expectation for the 25-26 year. A mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Leslie, thank you. And Trish? Yes, Patricia.
Yes, you just moved it before.
Yeah.
This, it's more whether there's any more changes that council wants. This was drafted up based on the comments from the workshop that we had, which ICHL directors were present at. So we've drafted it up based on that, but it's more whether council is happy with that form so that we can get it off to ICHL before Christmas. It would normally go in the first week of December.
So I have 3 questions for you. The first one, there's no mention of the $600 million, the $6 million special dividend from the sale, and I understand that's because it's in future years?
That's correct.
Not, okay. At what stage will we be able to identify what the sale price is? I see one part of the sale is still yet to be finalised.
I think that is currently being finalised, and I expect that to be in the next report from ICHL
Yep.
as they move the money back through the group.
And the final issue was in that letter there was also a mention of paying off debt, and I couldn't understand from that whether that meant they were going to pay off all their debt or just some.
I do believe they are looking at paying off all their debt.
Yep. And that will still leave them with some funds for future investments.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Oh, sorry, Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Clark. Just a couple of clarification points on page 96 of board books, or whatever that page is. On the third page of the report, just the significant investments. Just wonder whether we should be clarifying that as a number. That's just a point for consideration. And then down a bit further, there is a positive relationship between risk and return. I don't know if that sort of makes sense. Maybe the word positive needs to change. The other question I had was, should the letter of intent have a targeted level of return, i.e. 4%, which on an equity level of 135 million is about what they're looking to. But I think from my perspective it gives direction to the directors of ICHL that, you know, that's what they've got to, you know, try and achieve.
Yep.
As a minimum of that. And then the only other thing was in the second last paragraph, read the communication, any further decision on whether to pursue CCO under local water done well. I thought we gave quite clear direction that we didn't see that was going to be anything we wanted them involved in, but I'm happy to sort of have that clarified by the committee or by the council.
Yep. Patricia, do you want to answer some of that?
We can certainly add in, I think the positive comment about positive relationship to risk and return, meaning higher risks means higher return.
I understand that, but it doesn't read like that for the probably layman who wasn't part of it.
And we could give them a target return. Maybe it would be more appropriate that we amend the letter to say
we would expect you to set a target return on investment and then see what they come back with in their draft SOI. Knowing that, you know, this is a public meeting, we're saying 4%, it would be higher than 4%.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Tom?
I had the same question that you did, Mayor, about the $5 or $6 million special dividend, and I know that it's been answered, but I was surprised by the answer in that I thought that what Patricia had said was that we did not want it this year. But this is the statement of intent for 25-26. Are you saying that we don't want it next year either?
We may not need it the following year either, which is, as I explained in that workshop, until we understand the final spend on a couple of capital projects, we've said we could defer it a year later, which could move it into the early of 26, 27.
So that again, the early part of 26, which would be in the financial year that we're
No, the
25,
26, 27 financial year.
Okay.
Because it's uncertain, we can leave it and not actually put it in the letter of expectation. They are aware that we are looking for an additional dividend, and we have an agreement with them as until it will be paid when we determine we need it. So it doesn't need to come into the letter of expectation.
Okay, I would accept that. It's just I would have thought it would have been a little expectation. It may be required next year or something of that sort. By missing it out completely, not mentioning it at all, and particularly when you say we may not need it, it just sort of feels like maybe we won't ask for it at all.
I think the intention is that we would ask for it, but we are uncertain in which year we would need it. And that's why, and as explained at the workshop, we were keeping that open-ended.
But wouldn't you mention in the letter of expectation that you may ask for it this coming year?
We could add in that we may ask for additional dividends, but that's probably as far as I would like to put it.
Okay.
Okay with that? Alex?
Thank you, Chair. My question is around the Councillor Dermody's comment around like a targeted return. I recall some time ago us having conversations about that particular topic, and that some of our assets were strategic assets, such as the airport and such, that might not necessarily get that return, but are necessary for us to have as a strategic asset. So I would caution us doing that, because we don't really want to set them up for failure.
Through you, Chair, we can put a target that we can be looking for a set of targeted returns. They are getting returns from the airport. They have some non-commercial investments, which was the investment in ICL, which could be seen as Don, but they tend to balance. It's having a balanced investment portfolio. If it was higher, I would be expecting more than 4%. But let them come back to us with what they suggest is an appropriate return.
Okay.
Rather than asset specific.
Yeah, Trish?
Thank you, Chair. I would support Councillor Campbell's comment about having note of that dividend in this letter. We're going in with a new council in September, and it could possibly get lost. I would like it somehow referenced so that it's quite clear that we may expect it next year even.
I will add it in, but as you will know, we could ask the holding company at any time for an additional dividend. So the fact that we put in a letter of expectation, they know what they do their planning with us, so that they're more than well aware of what our requirements for dividends are.
Okay.
Yep. Any other discussion? Yeah, Rhea.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to support Councillor Dermody's raising the question about whether or not we felt comfortable as a committee to have or pursue for ICHL to look after the water CCA aspect, and we quite unequivocally said we did not wish them to pursue that.
Yep. Yeah, Michael, I saw Patricia looking at you.
Through yourself, Chair, there's a slight difference between requesting they not pursue it and our requirements to actually get the information to under what is in the local water done well legislation around actually looking at CCOs. So they're the best body to be able to provide us that information and support. It's not about pursuing, but we need the information to be able to actually present that back to council as well.
I don't feel quite comfortable with the explanation. Sorry, that wasn't how we spoke about it at the workshop.
Grant.
Yeah, so it's a bit sort of foggy, that statement. Why would we need them to provide us information about a CCO for local water done well?
Through yourself, Chair, that's in relation to what structures, etc., would be required. But bearing in mind we've got the direction from council already about the direction that council wants when we come to a decision point. But from perspective of fulfilling our obligations, we have to have a look at it in relation to bringing that option back to council, even though we know the direction of council. We're not in the best position to actually draft it from an operations perspective. We can do the constructs from a legal sense, but the actual operations, it's better to get a CCO operator to be able to provide us that input in relation to it. So that's just the mechanics of why that's in there. It's not about supporting or not supporting the CCO. It's just getting the advice in relation to what that would look like for council.
Yes. So just follow up. So because they've run other businesses like that, EIL and so forth, then they're best placed to be able to give us the advice around how a CCO might look under local water done well.
Through yourself, Chair, that is what I'm indicating as an independent.
Yep.
You okay with that, Ria?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Well,
It's-
no,
yeah,
but
I think the wording therefore, needs to change in the letter of intent to reflect what the CEO
Like we said.
Yeah.
The wording was put in that particular way because we don't know the timing. So at the moment, they are providing that additional information, but it's the 24-25 financial year. This is 25-26, letter of expectation. So that's why it says we will communicate any further future direction as to whether to pursue a water CCO. And that the noting the fact that they have offered to provide support in that area. So that's really just a holding statement that we note they have offered, but at this point we're not indicating that we're going to do it, and we will come back to them once we have all the legislation and council have made its final decision.
I've got another 2 or 3 hands up, just as a reflection at the Local Government New Zealand conference last week. DIA have put up a moderator role, which can come back to individual councils and give them some more technical advice on some of the CCO options, because there are a range of them. So that's a safeguard for us as well if we need further advice from what we might get from Holco. Darren.
I think the point's been covered now, Mayor Clark.
Thank you. Leslie?
Thanks. Patricia's probably said it, but look, we will communicate any future decision.
Yeah.
Pretty much leaves it in our court to be the
Does.
ones who are communicating, so I'm comfortable that sentence is in there. Yes, we had a good discussion at the workshop and clearly communicated we didn't want the pursuing, but that we acknowledge their offer, etc. And I think the we will communicate makes it quite clear it's us who will take it further.
Yep. Okay. Tom?
Chair, I'm personally not supportive of the letter as it stands.
Yep.
I think there are 2 matters which councillors have raised which I also feel fairly strongly about. I would have liked to have had management be a little bit more, would you say, prepared to listen to the concerns. So my question would be what the process would be from a governance perspective in terms of, are the only option for us if we don't support it to vote against it, or can we move modification? I'm concerned about the two aspects I'm concerned about. Obviously, the fact that there's no mention of payment in 25-26 as a special dividend, it just feels to me as though it's disappearing over the horizon, never to be seen again. And the other thing is this question about advice to the CCO, where the wording is such that it does give the impression that they're kind of on standby to be asked. So, you know, on the basis of those two, I would vote against it. And what I'm asking is, how do we get that letter? How can we propose to modify that letter, or do I have to simply vote against?
Yeah, no, we can have the discussion about it, but I'll just let Michael respond first.
I'll respond to the second one first and then go back to the first one.
Yep.
The second one in relation to the local water done well, I will remind council the discussion happened in a workshop, not in a council decision making, and we have to provide all full information to council before you make your decision. Hence this letter of expectation needs to indicate that if you make a decision in relation to local water done well at a meeting that you are or are not going to CCO at that meeting, then that would change. So it's kind of, we've got to write this letter without having a decision in relation to a final decision in relation to council's path. We have heard and we do understand, hence the wording is around should we pursue. But if I go back to the other one, the two parts that we've already got the support from the ICHO in relation to the special dividend previously, not in the statement of intent, because as you've heard from my financial GM, is that it's likely we're not going to need it in the next year, and we can call it up at any time. There could be something you could put into this draft, but I wouldn't recommend it, because I would say it's ahead of the time, and you can do it at any time.
Through your chair, will we be borrowing any money next year?
Correct, yes.
So how can we possibly say we're not going to need it?
We could take it instead of that, instead of borrowing. That was not the initial direction that council had indicated to Holdings that they wanted the funding for. They had identified it for a specific purpose, and that's what I've been monitoring it against.
So just before we get to further questions, Patricia, just one thing that I wanted to comment on about what Michael said. We have 5 options put in front of us in relation to outcomes for local water done well. Obviously one of them is standalone, but the other 4 all involve a CCO. So it's not a matter of us getting advice on whether we opt for a CCO or not. When we go to public consultation, a CCO, one of the CCO options, there's 4 of them, will have to be put on the table as another alternative to standalone if that's what we want. So we're going to have to go down the path of considering something in that area anyway. It's not a matter of just saying, look, we can ignore it, we won't go down the CCO. We don't have an option just to put standalone. We do need one of 2. Sorry, Alex.
I just wanted to first ask a supplementary question as a follow-on to what you've just said, Patricia. Is there actually any detriment to us drawing down that dividend rather than drawing down or borrowing?
We'd be doing both. Our need for borrowing is much higher than the dividend. We're borrowing between 10 and 15 million at least per annum.
To the Deputy's mere point though, would we be in an advantage if we did that earlier rather than later, rather than for specific purpose?
It potentially has a interest savings cost if we were to draw it down. So it may be that we draw it down this financial year. That's why I'm saying it's been left open for us to make the call in which year we would draw it down.
Leslie.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Look, for the comfort of other councillors, we could add an additional sentence to paragraph 2, where at the moment it says, beyond this point we confirm council's expectation that dividends return to the level of 5.5 million plus inflation. We could add a sentence there that said we also confirm that we may ask for an additional dividend in this financial year.
Within the next two
If
financial years.
that will help councillors to feel more confident, we're confirming we may or may not require it, and it's in the letter.
That was where I was thinking we would add in the additional paragraph.
That seems to me a reasonable
Yep.
way
So,
of adding it in.
thank you. Tom, are you okay with that?
I think Leslie's probably, the last part of Leslie's sentence is, I think, appropriate. I mean, I think the first part ought to be that we note that their board has approved the payment of a special dividend,
Yep.
and that we may require to call that down in this coming financial year.
Yep.
But let's get the fact that they have acknowledged the payment before, rather than just say we may ask for a
Yeah.
special dividend.
I'm not, through you, Chair, I'm not sure we can say have approved, because there is, as I understand it, no board resolution to approve the payment of such a dividend. They have indicated that they are comfortable with paying us an additional dividend, but they haven't actually done the formal approval. So I think we'd say you have indicated that there is a potential for an additional dividend, and that timing of that dividend is up to council, and we would remind you that'll be within the next 2 years.
I thought Brian told us, the chair told us that they had approved it.
No, I don't believe I've seen the resolution, because they would have to, in order to prove a dividend, you would have to have the solvency certificate and do all those at that point of actual payment. So they are, in principle, have said that they will provide us with an additional dividend.
So, Patricia, that was my take as well, that Brian was quite adamant, because I asked him about that, about the $6 million special dividend, and he was quite adamant, in my view, that was like a done deal. So when we start talking about expectations, and yes, it could be, it gets a little bit hazy around the edges for me. Rangi.
I think council is very premature in the dismissal of the CCO concept, and this needs to be tempered, because council is hugely conflicted, because if a CCO option, depending on how it was technically, would change the way this group operates, both in governance and in staff, because you take out 3 waters, everything changes. Now really the end game should be what is best for the community, and if you look around the country at the way councils have looked after the 3 water, it's been a disaster. Even in the capital, the Prime Minister made it quite clear at the opening of the local government conference when he said we're standing in a beautiful $400,000 convention centre and the sewage running down the streets. Now, I don't know, I'm going to have to ask the CE here, where do we stand with that conflict and move forward? Because we can easily dismiss it, but I believe we are legally conflicted in making that decision. So,
Well, before I ask the Chief Executive to respond to that, it's certainly my understanding, talking to other councils, that they are moving, some are moving towards a CCO. One, because 4 of the 5 options that are available to them, and they have to put 2 to the community, so you have no choice, but you've got to put at least 1 CCO to it, are driven by 2 factors. One is they perceive some economy of scale, and that's primarily around procurement, and secondly, that some of those councils do not have enough headroom going forward in the next 10 years to be able to get the work done. They physically don't have the dollars, and a good example of that is Gore. So they're keen to get in, but that's not necessarily has to be our scenario.
but that is irrelevant to us making a decision.
I've not precluded any decision. I just said earlier on that if we were to elect standalone, we still have to include a CCO, or we could go to 2 CCO options.
But what I'm asking purely about is the conflict and how we overcome the conflict, because we are the decision makers, yet it's like turkeys voting for an early Christmas. It's going to change us dramatically.
Well,
If there is no answer, that's fine, but I'm very wary of this council making a decision on something that it affects it so personally.
Well, I guess before Michael responds, two things to that. One, that's what elected members are here to make decisions on these sorts of things. And secondly, not all CCOs require a transfer of the total side of the organisation across to a new entity. Some of the options within the CCO cluster are not a lot more than just shared services. But Michael, if you want to respond to that.
Through yourself, Chair, look, we haven't taken legal advice in relation to that particular question, obviously, at the moment. However, I can go take that away and get that reviewed. What I would say is, under the Local Government Act, reviewing the nature and provision of services is part of the Act anyway. So the best mechanism to provide any service across council is part of that. So we are obligated to review all services from that perspective, and even from a staff point of view and operations point of view, that personal impact in relation to those services is not something taken into account when you are reviewing those. It is based on the best outcomes for the community. So that is part of the Local Government Act, and that is what we do as from an operations and executive point of view.
No, excellent. Thanks, Michael.
Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to modify the additional sentence I suggested adding, perhaps it should start, as previously discussed, Council also confirms that we may require a special one-off dividend in the 2025-26 year.
Okay. Okay with that? Yep. Trish.
I had some concerns about the word potential. Patricia, I'm sorry, I didn't believe it is potential. I believe it's an agreed investment, not determined when or where, but it is agreed that it will happen. So the word potential to me is questioned whether it will happen or not.
Mayor Clark, potential is indicating in which year. It potentially could occur in the next financial year or the year.
Okay, sorry, I was reading as potential investment.
Yep.
Well, then the adjective's in the wrong place. It would be potentially in the next year. It wouldn't be potential dividend. It would be a dividend of that potentially next year.
Yep.
Yep, that's valid.
How we going with that, team?
Council also confirms that it may
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
can-
may I seek?
Sure.
Just as
Yep.
how that's been constructed.
Yep.
I'm wondering if there's any appetite from other councillors, because I'm still uncomfortable with the paragraph about would communicate any further discussion as to whether to pursue a water CCO. Would it be, could it be helpful if we state, similar to what Councillor Sobers said, as previously discussed, any future decisions as to whether to pursue a water CCO under local water done well, we will communicate this with ICHR?
Can you run that past me again?
I'm
Sorry.
just wondering if other councillors had the appetite to ask for the sentence which relates to whether we will pursue a CCO. I'm wondering if it would be helpful if we put in there, similar to what Councillor Sloper has said, as previously discussed, any future decision as to whether to pursue a water CCO under local water done well, Council will communicate with you on this in the future. Because at the moment, I'm just, as it is, I'm still not relatively comfortable, and I've listened to the responses from our CE. I still don't think it reflects in the discussion that we had in our workshop with them.
But the discussion was informal, it was a workshop.
Yep.
The appetite, I felt, at that stage was, we were quite clear that we weren't.
But it's still a workshop.
Yes, and
We
this
haven't
is,
made a decision.
yes, and this is a council meeting now, where this workshop communication that we had with them doesn't actually sit completely on the line of what we had discussed. And I know that in this letter isn't not saying that we are deciding on how to frame up a letter of expectation.
May I make a suggestion that we have a local workshop, a local water done well workshop next week? I guess that will be the stage at which we sort of formalise which of the two of the five options we want to present to the community, which we have to communicate to DIA by Christmas, and then we have to take out to the community in February, March next year. So maybe that will help clarify where we're at. I mean, I don't have any predetermination. I've got a view, but I guess other people have different views as well, for sure. Okay. So Leslie, you've made an amendment there. Do we need a second for that? Oh, sorry, Tom.
Yeah, look, I think we've just gone back about 6 months. That we may request payment, I thought we already had. And I thought it had already been agreed by ICHL that one would be paid. Personally, I think that special dividend should be paid in settlement of the sale of those two. That would be normally what would happen. And while we say we've got no use for the money, I mean, that just sounds plain ridiculous, considering we're borrowing money. We could offset borrowing and reduce interest costs. So, again, Mr. Mayor, it just feels to me as though this is kind of disappearing over the horizon for no good reason that I can see. I cannot see any reason why if somebody gave us $5 million, we could not do anything with it like reduce borrowing. I just don't understand that. And in this circumstance, it would normally be paid on settlement of the sale. Not at some future point we may ask for it. I don't like the word may, but also I think it should just be paid on settlement and used to reduce borrowing.
So just a couple of quick questions there for you, Leslie. I understood it was 6 million, not 5.
It says 5 million. I just looked back at the slides that Brian presented, and it said 5 million in 2024, actually. Okay. And would there be some agreement on, we want the payment made on the sale of the company? I'll settle.
Well, at the moment it's described as a special dividend. We all understand that it is tied to the sale of that particular asset. But if you want to actually specify this is down to the sale of that particular asset, but I think the more important thing is the timing of when it is most beneficial to council to ask for it. And if the advice we're getting from our finance team is that there is good sound reason why we would not ask for it in 2025-26, but would ask for it in 26-27, then I feel we are better to have a sentence that acknowledges the existence of the expectation of the special dividend, but leaves open when we as council require it.
Okay, so Patricia, I need to clarify what you said before, because I'm not sure that what Leslie just said is what you said. You said we don't require the money, given that the money's probably earmarked for the museum, till that latter year, but then you confirm with Tom that we will be borrowing next year, so why wouldn't we have the money, be it the $5 million sitting in our bank account as opposed to sitting in Holco's bank account?
So that's something we can work through with Holco. I was suggesting, and we could request that it be paid in February or March. That's what we kept it, so that it was flexible. The proposed wording from Councillor Soper, I would suggest that we remove the word special dividend. It has a specific meaning within the Companies Act and should just be called an additional dividend.
Sure.
A special dividend comes up with connotations that we probably don't want, and then we just call it an additional. That's the same wording that we used when we've asked for the additional 4 million a year on top of the standard 5.5 plus CPI. So we can do it. We were trying to manage cash flows as well as borrowing and revenue targets to allow our borrowing. That's why we're being flexible about when we request it. Deputy Mayor, because that it gives us an additional headroom. With that dividend, there'll be a spike in our headroom, so we're trying to make those as flat as possible so that we continue that debt headroom right through.
So given that response to Tom, that paragraph would have to change to say, as previously discussed with council, we confirm that we will be seeking the additional dividend by March 2025.
I said we could even request it in March. What I'm saying is it also confirms it will request payment of an additional dividend within the next 2 financial years.
Yes, it will change.
So change may to well.
Yep.
That's
But again, and I know we're going around.
I don't understand. I do not understand.
Let me deal with that, Tom.
I beg your pardon.
Yep. Patricia, I don't understand that either. It just doesn't seem right to me that we let that special dividend of $5 million sit somewhere else other than in our coffers at a time when we will be borrowing money. Wouldn't we be better off having the money available for, I mean, if this is potentially a year, 2 financial years away, wouldn't we be better off saving the interest that we would be paying on the borrowing by having the cash flow?
I can, from the direction of council at the time when we had the discussion with the holdings company, we were comfortable with leaving it with the flexibility, but I get the direction from the councillors is that you want me to request it now. I shall go and request it from holdings.
Yep.
They do. We are just arranging the payment of the first half of the dividend for this year. We can request that additional payment come through early next year.
Yep. I've got a number of hands here, so Michael first.
Thank you. Through your chair, I just want to highlight financials in relation to local government are quite different to the commercial space. In a primary area, which is in debt management, because our debt cap and our ability to borrow is based on our revenue, not on other factors like asset base, which you do in the commercial space. If you request that revenue ahead of time, then you will have a dip in your ability to borrow in the latter years. So the timing is important in relation to your ability to actually borrow. It's a strange mechanism, and is fairly unique to those on the LGFA. And that's, I believe, when Patricia was talking in relation to their modelling, that's highlighted what they were trying to model. And that could be this year or it could be next year, but the way it's worded now is you will request it. It's just timing to make sure it's best for your debt position from a council. It does not limit it to being able to be requested, i.e. tomorrow if you really wanted to, but it's to make sure you get the best financial outcome for the council. I don't have those numbers on hand myself to be able to look at that just at the moment, but that is the logic behind why it is. It's the difference between the commercial and the local government financing world.
Okay. Trish.
Can I ask a different
Tom.
question?
Yep. Thank you.
Originally, when we talked about this, the concept was that it was given to the museum fund in the same way as we're getting, money from ILT and from and so forth. That it was a company a contribution to the museum. In other words, it was ring fenced to the museum. And then, when that was suggested, I think it was suggested, no, it's better not to be done that way. I never quite understood the reason. I don't know if we're given a reason, but we were told that it's better not to be done that way. Could I ask that question again, because that was always what it was considered for,
Yep.
would be that given the additional sale of Pernet, rather than that money disappearing into whole coast funds, that money could be given to the museum fund.
Sure.
And we're told maybe that wasn't the best way of doing it, but I just don't hear that there's any way of doing it now. It just kind of is going to be a fog someplace, I think.
Yeah.
So
Patricia.
what is the issue with giving it to a museum fund?
Sure. Patricia or Michael? Looking at each other.
I'll take this one away from Patricia through yourself, Chair. I'd just highlight that the discussion that we had in relation to that was in public excluded. The reasons given were in that particular meeting. I wouldn't want to bring them forward to a public session. I do ask council if they can have the chance to go back and look at that, because we did highlight a very clear specific reason which I'm not actually willing to put into the public space.
Trish. Hello.
No.
You're okay. Darren.
I'll peel back half of what I was going to say on the advice of the CE. But I think it's worth remembering that money that sits accumulating interest in Holdco's account is still ours. I think you missed that, Tom.
I beg your pardon.
Money that sits in Holdco's account accumulating interest is still ours. So whether it's in ours or theirs, it's still ours. While I understand the desire to shuffle and perhaps take the dividend and use it for other intentions for which we would need to borrow, the effect of that is it changes the story that we're telling for, say, a key project we might want to put that dividend towards. So if the money that was provided potentially in a special dividend or an extra dividend that council could decide to use for a project was used to offset a roading budget, that will therefore increase the amount of money that we have to borrow for the museum. So it changes that story. With the change in the recommendation that sits there, it still gives us the ultimate flexibility. I mean, in the end, if we require something, we can go to Holdco and ask for it, and we have to let them go through the process. Coming away from the workshop, I was comfortable that they understood what our ultimate outcome was and that they will work towards that. I do like the potential of setting of a dividend target. I think that was a great suggestion, but anything else I'm kind of reluctant about. We want them to go off and do the best that they can, and even around the water CCO, those are not intended to be profit-making ventures. And while Holdco can provide advice, their purpose is to generate revenue for us, and that might not include holding a non-profit making venture. So there's just a couple of things you possibly want to keep in mind as we crawl towards a decision. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just Michael or Patricia, coming back to, I understand the debt ceiling around revenue. I suppose the key question for us is, though, that, you know, what's the benefit to ratepayers about that? So do ratepayers get a benefit versus if they get income now, which obviously would reduce potentially rates?
When our dividend income is spiky, it means our need for general rates take spikes as well. So if we get a lump sum amount in one year, and this was the discussion that we had in around the 10 years of 4 million a year, if we were to get it in 1 year, and need for a rates increase would be incredibly low, but would have to make it up with rates in the other years. So this is not as big. I appreciate that, but it has it's the same impact. So we get some large one-off dividend income, takes down their needs for rates, for general rates, but then the next year it would go back up again.
Yeah, so supplementing, I wasn't meaning the whole, upfront dividend that was forecast. It was more that additional dividend, I think we're calling it now.
Yep.
And if you look at our rates profile, it's high next year. So my logic would be that if it's brought in, then that would obviously help to offset some of that for next year. And then, because we've phased the residual dividends coming through the balance of the long-term plan, then obviously that's been programmed into the rates. But if we bring it in next year, potentially there's an opportunity for us to have.
It's something we can look to as we're working through the annual plan budgets.
I think we should.
Barry?
Yeah, if we claim this dividend, I've had a lot of complaints about all the low mow areas around town. Our city's looking really disgusting because they mowed ours down my area and it's all standing up again. Can we not use some of this money to go into that funding for that project? Because we've taken that away and the city looks tired with all the long grass everywhere.
Just a reflection on that. If you do, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because we're going to need the money for the museum somewhere along the line. The other issue is, and I'll give you an update at a later stage on this, but we had quite a lengthy session by 2 Australian states on capping rates at the local government conference recently. You'll see in there that there's some serious implications if the current government decides to go down that path. So potentially we could end up with a rate increase of somewhere between 1.5% and 3.5%, but that does not include waste. And so that you would find that in that sort of process that low mows would become a pretty constant sort of focus. You'd be looking to cut services. You have no choice about that. Anyway, Trish.
Thank you. Just in response, Barry, to your comment about the low mow, I believe we've already made a decision to change that practice in a previous meeting.
We did.
Yeah, that was my understanding, that we have gone back to normal mowing, but it's just the wet conditions that we've had in recent times that have not allowed that. Yeah, Tom, did you?
Just ask the farmers.
Yep, you indeed.
I think also through this discussion we've lost sight a little bit of where the idea of an additional dividend came from. Last year we had a proposition that some of the assets which were non-strategic might be sold, and that the best way to have that money come back to council would be through a additional dividend on an annual basis for 10 years, that being $4 million for 10 years. Then subsequently a decision was taken separately that we would also sell a shareholding in Pernet.
Yep.
And the idea that the additional dividend was to reflect that additional sale of Pernet, which had never been factored in to the original 4 million extra a year.
Yep.
And although I don't know exactly what the Pernet was wrapped up in the whole sale process, so that we never saw exactly what was got for Pernet, but it would have been of that order. So that was where that $5 million additional dividend came from. It was not simply a request for an additional dividend.
Yep.
It was reflecting the fact that the sale of Pernet had never been reflected in the original proposal with respect to dividend.
Yep. Okay, any further discussions? So we have some degree of unease about the wording, but I will put the wording the way it is, because I think that's where the majority's going. And if that's not successfully supported, then I'll allow you, Tom, to come back and reword it to be a bit more definitive on what happens to that special dividend. So you see the wording in front of you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? No, that's fine. That's done business. Thank you for that. And the last agenda item for us is the Chief Executive's Management Report. Thank you, Patricia. The floor is yours, Michael.
With your permission, Chair, I'll deliver from...
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. What I would like to highlight is there's a lot of work going on in relation to government and local government sphere just at the moment. You'll see a lot of amendment bills sitting there, Building Act, Resource Act, sale of licence and liquor and licensing. What I do want to draw our attention to, and it's probably the smallest bit I've actually got in there, is around the Resource Management Act reform. There's a lot of change coming through. Indications are we're going to get a lot of legislation through our doors within the next 4 weeks. At this stage we don't have a full indication of what they will be, but we have been indicated they will be some reasonable changes from government. Our team is trying to prep and get ready in relation to that volume coming through to be able to respond. I have no doubt we're going to want to provide our own submissions in relation to those. So the team is aware that it's coming up, and I'm trying to get my team ready for that workload. The other items I'll take as read and I'll open them up for questions, but I just want to highlight that one because it has a significant implication into my team's workload.
So I'll do the first issue. You'll notice in the report there's a mention of the ACT MP Simon Court with a private member's bill. I understand that hasn't been drawn yet, so it's in what's loosely referred as the barrel, and could be some time before it's done. I've written away and supported the concept of the ILT, but I have Simon coming to visit with me on the 17th of December, just before lunch. So it'd be helpful for me to know around the table those that are opposed to his bill that removes the special protection, I guess, of licensing trusts. I know Alan's written away personally, and that's fine as well, but I just want to make sure that I have a position by the...
Should we go further actually and move that we oppose it? So there's a resolution of council against it?
I'm happy to do that, but if people want to have a discussion about that, welcome to have that before we do that. Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Part of that members' bill, I think, for considerations as to whether this council supports or opposes, is that I think we need to look at the health impact of having alcohol readily available in our supermarkets, and Te Whatu Ora has actually provided those stats online. I think for those that oppose it, that will further give you more information as the community issues that come out from sale and supply of alcohol inside of supermarkets. We already have mechanisms in this community to dissemble the ILT or the Matara licensing trust for people that live there. I think that this bill has huge ramifications for our community, but I just implore each person to actually have a look at those health outcomes.
Yep, thank you. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I just, I guess really wanted to follow on from what Ria said, and not so much in that I wouldn't support a vote around the table or whether or not we do or don't oppose it. The only thing that I would consider or caution us doing is just making off-the-cuff sentiment decisions without any health outcomes or data or anything, like our actual proper paper behind it.
Sure.
That's the bit that I'm uncomfortable about. Like, I can tell you my own personal opinion, but I'm all about data-driven decision making, and that's not, it wouldn't be for today.
Yep, and quite rightly so. I mean, this could be quite some time away before it gets to go through the House. And at that stage, I think it would be helpful for us to have a report that looks at a wide range of things. I'm sitting on information around, I guess, what I perceive as the good that's done by the Trust, but you could argue the other way as well. Yeah, I understand that. Yep. So somewhere along the line, as that becomes more formal, I think we should have a formal discussion. All I was leading into today was I will be seeing Simon when he's down here. He's going to Matara as well, or going to Gore. I just wanted to give him I guess a bit of a personal view. I've already written to him about that, and you've seen the copy of that as well. Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was going to say it's a somewhat ignorantly written private members' bill that seems to have been very Auckland-centric
Yeah.
and is not showing awareness of the rest of the country and certainly not of the Southland, Invercargill and Matara situation. I oppose it, and I would like to think it doesn't get drawn out of the ballot at any stage.
Yeah.
I think there will be very significant opposition from here and from other parts of the country if it does get drawn from the ballot. It would be a little bit previous for us to pass a motion to oppose it today when it's not actually drawn from the ballots.
Yep.
At the same time, I think the very fact that you are going to get the chance to educate this member a little bit about the wider issues of the benefits of licensing trusts in areas such as our area, and give him the opportunity to reflect on some of the health issues that other members have raised, is a good thing. And if it does get drawn, I think we should formalise our opposition as a council and certainly submit on it.
Okay, thanks for that.
We should.
Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll just endorse what Councillor Bond and Soper have said, and I've written back to the member, letting him know what my view is, and I think he misses the point entirely around the community benefit we get from our two trusts, and it's massive over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So, I've also got a question about other parts of the report. Do you want me to leave that till Michael's report, or do you want me to leave that till? I'll leave it till.
Yep, thank you. Rangi.
No, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussions about that? No? Okay, Grant.
Yeah, so just, Michael, on your comment re government investment on page 4 or 6 of your report, and 450 million annual Crown investment, what would we get, or should we expect to get from that regionally or within the city?
So just bringing up the specific reference you're talking to.
Yeah, page 4 or 6 right at the bottom, maximum impact through 450 million annual Crown investment as part of $20 billion contribution.
Page 102.
I'm looking to the team. I'm not sure actually who, the one GM I think who's not here is the one who drafted that one for me in relation to that. So I'll have to take that away. So you're wanting the share in relation to what our council would expect in relation to.
Yeah, and I think we should be bold in pitching for that too.
Yep, thank you for that. Any further questions? No, I move in a second to accept that Alex and Trish. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Somebody like to move that we finish the open session and move into public excluded.
Second.
Alex and Barry, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried.